Hello TWF students, my name is Trent Dyrsmid, and in case you have not yet heard of me, I was right where you are about 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago, I interviewed Dan on my podcast. I was struggling with Amazon. I was actually taking the private label approach. I'd never heard of Wholesale. I'd never actually even heard of Dan. I was introduced to him. And after I did the interview with Dan, I, like you, became enamored with the Wholesale business model and decided to jump in with everything I had. 2 feet first, 4 feet first, however you'd like to describe it. I was in, I was on board. And within 5 months, my business had gone from zero to over $100,000 a month. In our first year, we did just shy of 1.1 million, and we have sold millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of products and landed many accounts since then. And in today's video, I want to walk you through how I have taken and how I believe you should take a systematic approach to running and growing your business. So, first off, why are systems so important, and what is the difference between systems and a training course? So the TWF training course, as you know, is a fantastic training course. It is filled with all of the knowledge that you need to go and be successful in Wholesale. And if you were going to do all of the work yourself, you probably could get away without having systems. However, this is not a business where you can do all of the work yourself. I now have a team that sits at the other end of the building that we purchased as a result of our success with Wholesale. And they're doing, I don't even work in the business anymore. As a matter of fact, I delegated myself out within the first 6 months. So I want to make sure, because I know that most of you are probably trying to get this business going while you still have a full-time job. You probably have a family, you have commitments. So time is a wildly scarce resource. And in order for you to avoid what so often happens, and that is getting frustrated from a lack of results fast enough, and then that leads to demotivation and ultimately people quitting. And that's not just in this business, that's in any business. People starting a business is tough. So systems can really help you to not fall into that hole, or better yet, dig yourself out of that hole, or whatever way you'd like to describe it. So when I started, I looked at the product sourcing process as it is taught by TWF. And I realized, there's a bunch of stuff in there that we need to do a lot of, and it's not very interesting, and I don't really want to have to do that work. And continues to be really kind of mind-numbingly boring work. And so I place a high value on my time, as should you. And so what I did was I thought, well, okay, I'm going to do this like one time, but I'm going to document as I'm doing this thing, whether it's finding a competitive seller whose store you're going to extract, or using PC2 or tactical arbitrage, whichever you prefer, to actually extract the storefront and then do the evaluation and the checklist and all the products and all that. I call it grunt work, really just awfully boring grunt work. I thought, I only want to do that one time, and I don't ever want to do that again, because I knew that I could very easily, if I had good enough systems, I could very easily delegate that work to a virtual assistant, and I would only have to pay that virtual assistant $2, $3, $4 an hour, and I could have actually lots of virtual assistants. And so that's how I was able to get such a huge result from 0 to 100,000 a month in just 5 months, is because I started systematizing and delegating literally from the very first day. And I know that as I see the questions in the forums and I get them in my own Facebook groups, when in my business should I hire a virtual assistant? And the answer is today, the very first day, because that's what it takes to be successful in Wholesale. So I want to run you through, in the remainder of this video, I want to run through what I consider to kind of be the 5 biggest mistakes or most important things that you need to have in your business in order to put yourself in a position to have the opportunity to get significant results. I'm not going to say you're going to equal my results. I was full-time right from the get-go. I had business experience beforehand. Some of you may not. So I don't want to say, hey, you should expect to get to $100,000 a month in 5 months. And if you can, awesome, good for you. And let me know, because I want to have you on my podcast. But let's get you some really meaningful results. So without further ado, what are the 5 things? Number 1 is not having any systems, obviously, or having systems that don't have enough detail. When people are documenting systems, if they've never done it before, one of the common errors is they're in such a hurry to get whatever it is they're trying to do done, that if they bother to document their systems at all, they're sparse on instructions. Not enough screenshots, not enough big red arrows, not so that you could literally give it to a 9-year-old and they would be able to follow it. That is the level of that is the degree of detail that you need to put into your systems in order to have your virtual assistants be able to effectively use them without asking you so many questions that you'll just be like, I'm just going to do it myself. So if you're going to create your own systems, make sure they are highly detailed. So how do you do that? Well, you do the thing that you're doing, and you screenshot and document the thing while you're doing it. So you're creating the system while you're doing the thing, with the goal of to never have to do the thing again. So your systems have to have an immense amount of detail. Now, we started off, we put our systems in Google Docs, and originally that was kind of okay because I didn't have any other place to put all of this information. And since Webs has become a thing, I now actually own a software company that we use internally, and all of our systems live in it, and it's called Flowster. And if you haven't already learned what Webs is, you'll learn what it is. And Flowster is a part of that platform, and it's a really wonderful tool to allow you to create your systems. And I'll get into why some of the functionality is important in a minute. So, well, I guess the minute's up because that's point number 2. So big thing number 2 is you need to have, if you're going to start to hire virtual assistants or even employees, you need to have a project management system, a platform to facilitate discussion about all the projects that are going on, to be able to delegate and assign deadlines and so forth and so on. So Flowster, that's what we built it to do. Because in Google Docs, for example, yes, you can make screenshots and you can type lots of words, but you can't without using a third-party software application. How are you going to assign it to somebody? How are you going to give it a deadline? How are you going to get an alert if whoever you've assigned it to has missed that deadline? And if you've got 4 or 5 VAs like I had in the beginning, because I was very aggressive about my growth goals, and you've got all these products extractions going on and all these finding these competitive sellers, and there's a whole lot of activity going on. If you don't have a platform to be able to keep you informed as to the status of all of those things that you delegated, like I just did, it's just not going to go well. It'll be a huge big mess. So whether you use Flowster or some other application, if you're building your systems yourself, make sure that you put all of that content in a project management type platform where you can assign due dates to tasks, you can upload files, you can have conversations. The system will send email alerts to people when they've been mentioned in a comment, or when a due date has come, or when a due date is passed, or what have you. So, and the other major thing is that you want all of your conversation threads, the back and forth about the thing that's getting done, you want them to be in one place. Because if they're only in your inbox, mixed in with all of your other emails, it is going to be just such a huge nightmare to try and figure out where that conversation went and who said what and when and so forth. There's not really a very good audit trail. And so with Flowster or any project management application, you'll see, as the @ mentions, you'll literally find the conversation about the product extraction of ABC super sellers, one of your competitors, all the conversation about that will be in one place. And the other one about, DEF, silly sellers, or whatever the name of the other seller you're extracting is, all the conversation about that extraction, if there is any, will be in one place. All right. So number 3. And this is something that I was guilty of. I kind of made a big mistake early on. So for the first 6 months in my business, my job was sourcing. I did nothing but source all day long, every day, supported by these VAs. So essentially it boiled down to I just replied to the email replies that I received from all the emails that my VA team was sending on my behalf. And I was getting price lists, and I was negotiating and doing all the things that you need to do, the stuff that you need to do to be able to land accounts. And then after 6 months, we had enough cash flow. I had great systems, and so I hired somebody to replace me because I found the work boring and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I hired this fellow, and it took him a little bit to get up to speed because he didn't have, he wasn't as eloquent as me and so forth and so on. He hadn't had any sales experience and didn't have the communication skills that I had. But I gave him my systems, and within a couple months, he was up to speed, and my business, without me being involved, grew at 20% per quarter for 8 consecutive quarters. And then it started to slow down. And here's the mistake. I did not have in place good enough systems to measure the productivity of the individual. I'd become very comfortable with his results, and I stopped paying attention to the inputs, the activity, the number of calls, the number of emails, listening to his calls, and so forth. So make sure that you have measurement systems in place. Hubstaff is a great tool. If you're using VAs, it will take periodic screenshots so you can essentially see, are they putting in the amount of time that they are claiming to put in? That is especially important as your team grows, because you're not going to, micromanage everybody every day, but you're going to be able to know, hey, maybe I've got one VA that's kind of slacking it relative to my other ones, and having a tool like Hubstaff will help you to uncover that. The other thing is that we use HubSpot to manage all of our deals, all of our prospective wholesale account opportunities. And I'd even let that slip a little bit. I wasn't, paying as close attention each and every week to the deal flow and the number of deals in the pipeline and the close dates and all of those things. So again, having a really great system for tracking that, which HubSpot is absolutely imperative. And even if you're the one doing the sourcing, you should be putting your deals into HubSpot so that you're not forgetting about follow-up and so forth and so on. And as your team grows, more than likely you're going to have a remote team, and using Hubstaff is a great foundational piece for making sure that you have a successful remote team. And so I guess the only other thing I would add there is there's a company called Mountain Bikes Direct that runs out of Australia that I'd met. They're doing about $1 million a month. It's an e-commerce brand. I was at a conference, and they got up and gave a talk about how Hubstaff has been so successful for their remote teams. So I guess that's a great testimonial for how well it can work. Now, mistake number 4, or thing you need to have, number 4, is regular meetings with your team. Use Zoom or Skype or some way where you can see them and they can see you, so that each week you're talking about their job and their activity, and you're able to check in. And are they struggling with something? Are your systems not good enough? Do they have questions? Are they getting overwhelmed? How are they doing? You need to start to build some level of rapport with your team and get to know each other, and making sure that you have these regular meetings. Like every Wednesday morning, we have a team meeting, and we're using something called the Entrepreneur's Operating System, or EOS for short. And my wife, she facilitates this meeting using the guideline from the EOS book. So you can just go get the book off of Amazon. And that has really tightened up our meetings, because you don't want to just be sitting around and chewing the fat and wasting a bunch of time. You need to be following an agenda and a structure. So yet another system for your weekly cadence meeting to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. And then finally, number 5 is it's important that you have a constantly available chat room for immediate and instant interactions. We use Slack. You could use Messenger. There's any number of them that are out there. Choose whichever one you like. The reason that having instant messaging is important is for when things come up and they're a high priority. Like email is, we encourage our staff, if you don't need an answer like right this second, don't Slack me, send me an email so that you're not interrupting me and taking me off whatever priorities I'm working on at that moment in time. But if you really need an answer, like right now, like maybe you're on a call or maybe you're getting ready for the call starts in 5 minutes or whatever it is, and you need to get my attention, Slack is a great place for that. Slack is also a great place to water cooler talk, share jokes, share animated GIFs to, again, for when you have a team of people, which you will have if you become successful in this business, and you're not all necessarily in the same place. It's a great way to help build those relationships a little further than they would otherwise build. And so that is it. I imagine that where this video gets posted, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions and interact and so forth and so on. So I would encourage you to do that. And I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for tuning in. Bye-bye.